Okay, we're recording.
Great, let's call the meeting to order. This is the April 12th, 2024 Finance Committee meeting to order. It's noon. We have all three committee members here. Deb is in the room, Max and Shelley are online. And it looks like we have Make Out Joe, and it looks like we have a couple of board members. Sharon, do you just want to make a note of who all's here?
Yeah.
And we also have Ian's online, and I see Nate and Kim. And I can't.
You look right through me. Maria, you could tell.
Maria, sorry, Maria.
No worries.
It's kind of small.
Alan.
I'm guessing. Okay, great. So approval of the agenda. Are there any changes or additions to the agenda? Hearing
I
none.
moved to approve the agenda as presented.
Thank you, Shelley.
I second.
Great. We have in our packet the March 8th minutes. Is there a motion for those?
You want to go for it, Shane?
I make a motion to approve the minutes from March 8th.
Second.
Okay. And we are to Joe's report. Joe, it's all yours.
Thank you, Max. For the month of February, revenues for the shorter month were actually better than we've seen in prior months. We saw increases in Wildflower Court. We had some true ups to our anesthesia clinic as we got billing fully ramped up. So we posted revenue back to the system versus on an estimate. So you saw that in the outpatient clinics. Pharmacy had a strong month. They were up over 700,000 from the prior month. We started to look at contractuals as a percent of total. You saw that come down some during the month of February. And the primary driver there was we had a favorable mix on the payer mix. So commercial was 3.5% more as a percent of total from January to February. And so that helped bring our contractuals down as a percent of the total. On the expense side, I had major variances noted in your packet. Big ones are still contract labor running high and Wildflower Court and Crisis. Physician contracts is well over budget with the additions of anesthesia and oncology being those two primary culprits there. We are continuing to clean up our books. We're continue to wait on CPJ for some CIP information so we can close those out. In discussions with engineering, they are meeting with finance next week to try to get us that posted. With all of that, we had an operating loss of 5.88% for the entity, which is roughly $1 million short of a 3% margin. And our overall net loss was 4.4%. We continue to work on FTE committee, looking at positions as they become available, looking at our contract labor as we can do substitutions on those. We are continuing to do contracts. One thing I'm going to try to share as we get our next monthly report ready is the changes we've made year to date and the impacts, how that will roll out over the coming months. So you guys can get an idea when to expect to really see the impact of the changes we've made to operations. We're still working through APRD, DRG impact. So that's the way they reimburse our Medicaid inpatients. So the first month was relatively bad, as I had stated, where we lost roughly 150,000 decrease in revenue during the month. It's kind of stabilized as we get more and more claims processed through the system. It's not like quite as bad as it initially did. It's still not good. Through the first 2.5 months, the loss is or the decrease in reimbursement is sitting at 184,000. We continue to work with AHA and the state trying to see if they'll come back and relook at our base rates. So I'm not sure they'll do the rollout. Looking to the balance sheet, cash continues to decrease. February was a rough month. We did some cleanup on the accounts payable side, which contributed quite a bit to the decrease. We are still not collecting on Wildflower Court accounts. In addition to that, we had capital expenditures and we had some debt payments we made during the month. That contributed to the major decrease in cash on hand. The good news is Wildflower Court bills have gone out the door. So we've got roughly the first quarter of bills out for Medicaid to Wildflower Court, and then the first month for Medicare. And that's Medicare side's due to, you have to bill them sequentially and wait till they're accepted before you can send the next bill. So it's kind of a process in the Medicare side. But we should be getting the rest of the Medicaid stuff out. in the coming week. And the turnaround goes as well as it usually does with Medicaid. We'll see some of this cash coming before we close out the month. Home health survey happened, and then so we're in the waiting period for that building to happen. But on the hospice sides, they had given us a certification number and a billing number to start that. What happened was they certified us with a effective date in December, which is well after we commenced services. So we've had to go back and appeal that with the MAC, which is NSG for hospice. So we're in that process, but we are going to start building the stuff post that day to get those up the door. One thing that Max has asked about multiple occasions is now that we have Hall Ranger on board, I have engaged in the critical access hospital discussion. So we are in the early stages of that. They brought up a few questions, so if we can explore the total impact, what that would look like. Initial conversations were positive though. That kind of goes over the financials in my report for the month. Is there any questions?
Questions for Joe?
I don't have any.
Nope.
I've got a couple of things I just want to walk through with you real quick, Joe. Against budget, the employee benefits on the contractual, would you just, well, I think you've covered this before. I just want to make sure that favorable variance we're seeing in employee benefits, even though we've got a higher, so, and I'm on page 7, by the way, Sharon, of the packet. I apologize. Yeah, so I'm looking at line 23 compared to line 20. And comparing on the month, it's year to date as well. So we have $2.2 million actual for the month in employee benefits, 2.4 on budget, even though our salaries and wages are low. What is that, Joe? Why the positive variance there in employee benefits?
I'd have to dig into that one to give you the exact reason. I mean, employee benefits are posted as people elect the benefits, so I think it's accurately posted, if that's the question. I could dig into the specifics if you want me to.
If you wouldn't mind just following up maybe with an email or for next month's meeting, that would be super helpful. And the other, the catch up that we needed to do for depreciation, because of the CIP misstatement that we have, you're now recording that depreciation on those CIPs, correct?
On the CIPs, we were able to close out. There's still a handful of CIPs where we haven't got all the detail from CBJ. And so that's where we had to engage engineering, work with finance, so they can get us accurate numbers to start. So everything that is we can control, it is posted through this month, yes.
Okay. Great. So you've got, the answer is you got some of them, but not all of them, basically.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, work on that.
So the other, I'll tell you what, let's hold this for your budget conversation, but I want to talk a little bit about our employee benefit costs as it relates to the centralized risk management function of the city, but let's save that for the budget discussion. The other thing I wanted you to speak to, and now Sharon, I've gone to page 10. The line 3, patient accounts receivable net, that increase over the prior year is largely Wildflower Court, correct? And
Yes.
also, I guess, to a lesser degree, the issue with getting a provider number for hospice and home care. And of that, how much of that is Wildflower Court only?
I'd have to pull the number. I mean, we have 4 different services right now we're not collecting on. You have home health, hospice, we have anesthesia services, which is a chunk of it now too, and Wildflower Court. I'd guess roughly. I don't even want to guess Remax. I can pull the number. I have
So
that.
if we could, for next month, if we haven't collected a substantial majority of that,
Yeah,
could you just give us an idea? What I'm interested in is core hospital collections. That's where I'm headed is, how are we doing on collections on that stuff? So if you could give us, some summary information on that for the May meeting, that would be great.
yeah, I'll bring back a report. It won't show, because collections will happen in April, so we're still a month behind on when you'll see that in financial statements. But I'll bring
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, point taken. So for March, yeah. So just give us a report on what that looks like when we get the March numbers there.
I'll bring it.
And then,
I have a follow-up question.
Sure.
How are we doing with the contract agency that brought in to work on our accounts receivable?
So it's been slow to start. The slowest piece, what really bogged us down is the way that accounts transfer to bad debt. Now that process is caught up, so we're catching up on those. So I mean, overall, they're actually doing fine by my assessment. We are going to do a 1-year analysis on that and see if we want to keep the program or where do we go with that now. Where they've really been good is they were able to secure us a Medicare biller at roughly, a little bit more than staff cost, and it's been exceptional for us. And so actually collections during the month of March were almost $12 million in total, because we were able to get a lot of our AR cleaned up on the hospital side with that. So it's going pretty good.
Thank you.
Yeah, and one more question on the balance sheet. Then again, I'm still on page 10. Scroll down just a little bit there, Sharon. So it's row 24, other payables. That increase, what's in that increase over year, Joe?
Other payables.
And if this is a report in May, that's fine.
I can get back to detail. I don't want to be guessing on stuff. I think I have an idea, but I don't want to be wrong. So
Yeah, that's fine. We can dial in on that a little bit more in May. That'd be great. Okay. Any questions from board members in the room, non-committee board members on that? Okay. Great. So FY25 budget assembly presentation. Is that Ian or Joe? I assume that's Joe.
Yeah, this is just, I think we've shared this presentation with everyone. This is the presentation we gave to the assembly. So if you want to drop down to the slide that shows the service lines, I think it's slide 6. You go on 2 more.
Here we go. That's
So where we are at with this at the current point is we are working on decision point documents, recovery plan documents for how we address each of these service lines, across the board, including the hospital. So what we've done is we've started looking at the programs in total, where they are at in the current state. What's the best case scenario for each one of those, looking at different scenarios if we try to implement changes to those and what the impacts to those changes would be. We've actually I'm working with Cliff Hoban. He's someone that Ian brought in that's been exceptional, helping us with our strategic plan. And so we're trying to make sure when we make changes, we're aligning it back to some of our strategic goals as we make changes as well. So that's something I think we're going to try to get fleshed out, get them all detailed out to bring back to Finance Committee next month.
Joe, as part of that, well, first of all, Shelley or Deb, do you guys have any questions?
No, I've seen this. Thank you.
Same here.
I appreciate the work that you've put into this, Joe, and everybody there. And as the assembly said on Saturday, that there's going to be an ensuing public discussion about kind of what this portends. And is it as part of your analysis that you're doing, and I know you guys are working hard on that, can we get a by non-core, and I mean maybe the core too, but analysis that looks at what the opportunity opportunities are for improving revenue or reducing costs for each of these, and what the potential dollar impact of those options are, so that we can see, kind of here's where we are on a budget standpoint, but what is the realistic, for ABA, for example, what's a realistic potential change on this, given some, some things that we can control, services provided and who we provide services to, or rate changes on Wildflower Court and so forth.
Yeah, I think that's something we're gonna look at including with like scenario analysis as we look at changes, or what even changes you can make to some of those. Because some of them are kind of base staffing, so to make changes, you have to go below base staffing is either go, no go on some of these. Does that make sense? And so I think we're trying to flesh out as many of those questions prior to bring it to you. That makes sense. To answer your question?
Yeah, it does. I think that would be good. And it's information that we're going to need to be sharing with the assembly, certainly with the board and with the assembly as as far as doing these evaluations. But, as when we're looking ahead on these, maybe you can talk a little bit about rate setting for Wildflower Court, for example. I mean, you potentially have another emergency need request from the state for that, but then you'll be rebasing the year after that. And, what impact potentially is that going to have? What will that do for us? And that's I think what we're after. So we can tell the community, yeah, we've got a loss here right now that we're looking at for Wildflower Court, but we see that improving and so forth and so on.
Yeah, absolutely.
The other thing I wanted to bring up, and I guess this is much an awareness thing, and I'm hoping you can bring more information back to us in May for this as well. As wearing my chamber hat and looking at the budget for CBJ for FY25 and 26 that they're deliberating on right now, the CBJ has changed the amount. So they have the risk management function at CBJ as an internal service fund that they use to bill all of the departments for the cost of liability insurance, health insurance, the different coverages that we have. So they provide the service, the health or the insurance out of risk management, and then they bill everybody back for that. There's been a long-standing tradition that at CBJ, and there's science behind it. It makes there's insurance policy type things behind it, and they generally have targeted around 3 months of expense and reserve in that fund. And starting with FY24, they're going to go to 4 months of expense and reserve. And by the end of FY26, they're going to be at 6 months of expense and reserve. So they're basically doubling that fund balance. And that the dollar amount, what that equates to is $18 million of fund balance that they're going to be taking out of the various departments and putting into risk management. And the chamber has raised that issue with them as to why is this happening. We've raised it with the assembly. We've met with them. And I guess what I just want to put this on the table because, Bartlett is about half of the city. It's about half of risk management. And what I'd like to have a sense of, if possible, is what these budget changes what the flow through is, if you will. So when we're seeing that change in risk management, what does that mean for Bartlett? What are the increased costs that we're expected to incur that line up in our line 4 here, personal services line, that are because of the fact that we're being charged an amount in excess of what CBJ is incurring in its expenses? And so is that clear? And is that something that we could put on the list for you to evaluate for us?
Yeah, and I think I know how to probably address it, and it might be something I work with you between now and then, so how I'm presenting it is clear to everybody else. That makes sense. So I'd like to get one-on-one with you at some point, Max, during the next month, and show what information they provide so I can present it back to the rest of the board.
Perfect. Yeah, and I'm pretty sure finance should be able to tell you how much of those charges are going to be coming through to Bartlett. I think that they've got it by department. So
yeah, they have it lined out pretty clear.
Yeah, but I guess my point is that if we need to be able to communicate the impact that this is having to Bartlett by virtue of what they're doing in their risk management function. So Okay, that's,
I have a follow-up question to that, if possible.
Yep.
Yeah, the rationale for their doubling it, are we, I know we're the CBJ is self-insured, are we experiencing a higher rate of claims than our premiums our experience has been?
Yes.
That would cause them to do that?
no, so far, we haven't been able to, at least when you look at what they're incurring in terms of claims expense, it's in their financial statements, it's actually been pretty flat. And what they're doing is, these aren't the exact numbers, but, let's say they charge, or they have expense of $12 million. And then what they're doing is they're charging 15 million and they're rolling that into fund balance. When you have an increase in claims expense, normally that claims expense is a flow through, and it's the increase in the growth or increase in the revenue charge to the departments that's the issue. So they're forecasting an increase in the total expenses, but the revenues they're charging are going up faster than that. And that's what's causing this accumulation. They're not increasing those at the same rate. They're increasing revenues to the fund greater than they are the expenses. And just to be clear, CBJ has they have a hybrid program in place. Some areas, and because remember, it's a varied, we have liability policy, for example, Bartlett does. They've got a hybrid policy or a hybrid self-insurance thing for their employee health insurance. So there are stop loss limits that kick in for various coverages that, make that analysis complicated. But, Joe and I will talk about it, and he'll have some more information in May about what that means and how we've ended up. And we've asked the question, by the way, the Chamber's asked the question of the city and in a letter, and I'm sure there'll be more information about that over the next month coming out. So. Okay, great. Unless there's anything more on that. Anything more on the budget, Joe or Ian?
That's your question.
I wrap by saying that I've had conversations with 4 assembly members since last Saturday, and they were all very effusive with their praise about how well they thought you guys did and how well you guys are kind of managing the challenge that you have. So I appreciate the work and also the presentation itself. So thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I would just only add one thing is that, as Joe pointed out, one of the most important things that we're trying to do during this period is be as transparent as we can. Therefore, as we get all the information together to make decisions or scenarios to make this decision, we are going to have a standard decision point document that we can share with the appropriate individuals and get their input. So, for example, one of them might be, what are the alternatives in the community? Is there alternatives that can be easily accessed, or is there others that might be interested in that? In addition to just plain old financial analysis, can we cut costs here? Is there too much staffing relative to revenues? Is there price increases we can put through? All of those will be summarized on a decision support, so that as we go into these very difficult decisions, the board and the members of the finance committee feel confident that the amount of due diligence and analysis has been done to make a good decision, or at least a good recommendation. Whether or not the decision stands with the city might be a different issue, but at least we'll have that. And I think we'll shoot for having that done by the end of May, or third week or fourth week in May, so that we can move forward as quickly as we can.
That's great. Thank you very much for that, Ian. Shelley or Deb, any further questions on budget related stuff?
No,
No.
I would echo the assemblies and others' appreciation for the work that Joe in particular, but Joe and Ian did to get us to this point.
Yeah, Joe's the star.
Yeah. And since I've been on the board, this is definitely the smoothest conversation that we've had at a public meeting with the assembly when we're presenting our budget.
Yeah,
So
I think.
The background work was crucial to that.
Yeah, and I just echo that, Deb, absolutely. And you know, just also putting together something that's digestible, I think helps a lot too. But you know, we have a lot of work to do. And I think it's important for us to be mindful of the fact that everybody, when you look at those numbers, I mean, this isn't sustainable where we are right now. And, you know, we're working hard to identify how we get to sustainability and how we get there. But it is it's a very important task that we're undertaking. There'll be a lot of information that we're going to be receiving and kind of policy direction that we're going to have to be understanding as a board and where we want to be going over the next, you know, months and year or two. So it's going to be an exciting few months here for sure. So, but I appreciate that. So, okay. Next on our agenda is committee comments and questions. Anything additional, Deb or Shelley, that you have?
No, I just want to echo what's been said. Several community members have talked to me and been very impressed with the presentation for the budget meeting.
Great.
So again, I think that speaks volumes to transparency and education.
Yes. Okay, well, that brings us to adjournment. But before we adjourn, let's look at our calendar for May. Right now, we are scheduled for May 10th. Does that look good for everybody?
I believe so. I think I fly out that night.
Shelley, does that look good for you?
I
Yeah.
gotta go check. I have a ticket on the 10th, but I think I'm changing it. So
Well, let's hold tight here just to let you look at that, make sure that we're good for the 10th. I'd like to get it nailed down now.
yeah, I'm headed that way right now.
Okay.
Yep, I'm good. I got it. It is changed. So
Great. Okay, May
I will be
10th.
here on the 10th.
May 10th at 12 o'clock. We've got it on our calendars, and that's all we have on our agenda today. So with that, we are adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everybody. Have a good weekend.
You too.
Kind of anticlimactic. Although, next month, the next finance committee, all of that.
We start going